Well, Jamie Shea is a former NATO Deputy Assistant Secretary General and a Senior Fellow at the Friends of Europe think tank. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome back to the programme, Jamie. Really good to have your thoughts today. I mean, let's just take a step back and think, how changed is the Middle East conflict today? What kind of impact will Hassan Nasrallah's death have on Hezbollah's strategic ability to fight Israel? How do you see it responding?
Well, Israel will certainly see this as a triumph and a great victory. It's not only the ability of the Israelis to take out the leader of one of their adversary networks. They've done this, as we have seen recently, of course, with the assassination of the leader of Hamas in Tehran and the killing of several other commanders of both Hamas and Hezbollah. It's much more successful for the Israelis than that, because they've really managed to take apart the entire Hezbollah operation. They've not only killed the leader, Nasrallah, but also about 15 of his most senior commanders. They've taken out, as you could have noticed over the last couple of days, with these booby-trapped walkie-talkies and pagers, thousands of the mid-level of figures in the organisation. They've obviously succeeded in penetrating Hezbollah with lots of spies and moles, taking apart the communication system, and also attacking a lot of the ammunition dumps and missile sites. So for Israel, this is really dismantling its principal adversary. And for Iran, it's bad news too, because Hezbollah was the principal Iranian agent in the region, not only, of course, in terms of putting pressure on Israel directly from Lebanon, but also training and equipping Hamas in Gaza, training and equipping the Houthis in Yemen, who've also been firing missiles against Israel, and also keeping afloat the Assad regime over the border in Syria. So it's good news for the Israelis, and as far as Iran is concerned, it's losing the proxies through which it's fought against Israel indirectly in previous conflicts. The only thing is that, though this is a great military triumph, at least for the time being for Israel, it doesn't really clarify how Israel, in the long run, is going to actually be able to achieve any of its strategic objectives. Future of Gaza, population of Gaza, no real clarity. Dealing with the settlers and relations with the Palestinians on the West Bank, the same. Future of Lebanon. If it's just, as we've seen in the past, a pause after which these Iranian proxies like Hezbollah find new leaders, rebuild their arsenals and bounce back, then Israel is not really going to be, in the long run, any further forward.
Well, Israel certainly does not seem in any mood for diplomacy at the moment. This 21-day ceasefire in tatters, as John, our correspondent, was just saying. Do you think a ground offensive in Lebanon is likely next?
Well, the problem for the Israelis is that the only way they can really stop Hezbollah rocket attacks, which are still continuing, by the way. Hezbollah has about 150,000 rockets, so even though they've lost a lot and their leadership has been decimated, they're still able to sort of lob rockets into northern Israel, and even as far afield as cities like Haifa. So security in that northern border, which is necessary if the Israelis are to get their 60,000 citizens living in hotels elsewhere in Israel back, does require some kind of perimeter area in southern Lebanon. The problem is that the Israelis have tried this twice, in 1982 and then again in 2006, and both times they've been forced out by Hezbollah, taking a large number of casualties. And secondly, this border occupation, or this occupation of a strip in southern Lebanon, would play into Hezbollah's hands, because Hezbollah has proven to be very weak by having its command center in a relatively small area of southern Beirut, which the Israelis clearly have managed to, through a good intelligence, to penetrate and to strike. Whereas Hezbollah is much stronger as a kind of insurrectionary guerrilla operation in the countryside in southern Lebanon, attacking Israeli soldiers. So Israel may have to do this, but it knows that in the past it's never been particularly successful. So I think the Israelis are, if I can use the expression, between a rock and a hard place when it comes to the advisability of trying now to have some kind of incursion into Lebanon itself. It might allow Hezbollah, having suffered some very significant defeats, to bounce back by mounting a successful insurrection against the Israeli military presence.
And how do you see, Jamie, the international powers engaging to prevent further regional escalation? I mean, the United States and the other allies of Israel seem powerless, really, to do anything to deter Israel.
Well, indeed, Israel hasn't really listened to them, and the United States and Israel concluded some years ago a famous no surprises pact whereby they promised that they wouldn't take action unilaterally without informing each other beforehand. The Israelis clearly are not doing this any longer. They're acting unilaterally. As you said, they see themselves on a roll. They don't want to be pulled back now that they see a historic chance, as I've said, not just to kill the leadership of Hezbollah, but to dismantle, at least for a long time, the entire organisation. Hezbollah, on the other hand, cannot accept a ceasefire now because that would be seen as a sign of surrender and weakness after all that's happened to them. The one thing I think that the international community, the United States in particular, will try to do, number one, is to persuade Iran that this is not the time to retaliate. The US has got two carrier strike groups in the region that could come in on Israel's side. Of course, the Americans would warn Iran of the severe consequences of that. So to try to keep the war contained, they will also tell Iran that if it strikes Israel, the Israelis are likely also to retaliate against Iran and also further targets in Lebanon. Iran may come out as the loser. But I think, secondly, the international community will really be saying now to Prime Minister Netanyahu, look, you've demonstrated what you can do with military force, but in terms of the long-term security of Israel, peace with the Palestinians, ending the occupation of Gaza, stopping another intifada breaking out on the West Bank, getting the Houthis and the pro-Iranian militias in Syria and Iraq off your back, dealing with the issue of Lebanon. If you want long-term security, simply scoring military victories against your opponents isn't going to cut this. How are you now going to translate these military successes into a viable political strategy which alone can guarantee Israel's security? And I think it's on that message that the pressure is now going to be applied.
Jamie, great as ever to get your expertise. Jamie Shea, former NATO Deputy Assistant Secretary General. Thanks so much.